As climbers, outdoorsy people, heck, even as human beings on this planet, it's not a case of whether we should or shouldn't think responsibly about our purchasing decisions. It's quite simply that we need to think responsibly about it. Like all of you watching this right now, I'm a consumer. My purchasing of products to suit my lifestyle has a footprint on this earth that more often than not has a negative impact on the world at large. Just like everything else, the manufacturing of products like climbing gear and clothing requires energy and materials, all of which need to be produced and sourced from somewhere. And on top of that, the process of production is not always as clean as we'd hoped it would be. Which brings me to the overarching question: how can we reduce the impact of our purchasing decisions? Also, I'd like to address the elephant in the room, that although this video is mostly about personal purchasing decisions and reducing the footprint of the gear you buy, that our individual choices are only one part of the puzzle. And there are systemic changes that need to be made to make the biggest difference, i.e. looking at how big brands source materials and produce their product, or even more importantly, the government regulations that enforce environmentally sound practices in the manufacture of products. I do believe, however, that by doing our best as individuals to be responsible and to support the brands that are genuinely and actively pursuing environmental goals as part of their remit, we can make a difference. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about some more responsible solutions to purchasing climbing gear, as well as highlighting a few milestones in climbing gear manufacture that we really should know about if we want the future of climbing to be as sustainable as possible. But before I start, I just want to say a big thank you to Edelrid for sponsoring this video. Edelrid are my oldest sponsor. I've been with them for 13 years now, and it's great that even after all this time, they're still keen to support my video ideas like this one. Edelrid as a company are at the forefront of responsible climbing gear manufacture. So we're going to be looking at a couple of their most recent innovations in that area that give me hope that we're moving in the right direction. Right, enough waffle, let's get to the good stuff. We live in a world of overconsumption, with more and more of us consuming at a higher rate than ever before. The most obvious way to combat this on a personal level is to change your way of thinking to only buying what you need. The American clothing brand Patagonia famously brought out an advert in the New York Times saying simply, "Don't buy this jacket." The concept of which was to challenge the mindset of people to think about whether they need to buy a new jacket or whether it's just an unnecessary want. You know, I can personally relate to this, as having the latest gear is always nice, but often, you know, it's just not necessary. So I guess at this point we should try and identify what is defined by a need versus a want. In terms of climbing gear, I'd say a need is when, you know, we can't do the climbing activity without it, such as a beelie device for beelieing. You know, you just need it. Or if your old piece of kit is broken or worn out to the point of being dangerous, such as ropes. You know, they need to be replaced after a while. If your rope looks fluffy and worn out, then maybe it's time to recycle that rope and purchase a new one. However, a want is when, you know, the latest jacket hits the shelves in a bright new color, but you know full well that you have a similar jacket at home that's still going strong. Listen folks, I'm not saying you can't have nice new things. I'm just saying, think about whether it's a need or a want. And if you can safely justify the purchase as responsible, then go for it. Buying new is always going to require more resources than buying secondhand, so it's worth thinking about trying to buy secondhand when it's appropriate. You can check out one of our other videos, 8 awful gear mistakes, as I go into some detail about what you should and shouldn't buy secondhand. For items you can't buy secondhand, try to buy recycled. There are new innovations in climbing gear manufacture that have allowed old recycled materials to be repurposed for a new lease on life. A great example of this is Edelrid's new rope, the Neo 3R. It's the world's first semi-recycled rope and is literally leading the way into the future. Ha! See what I did there? Leading. The Neo 3R is made out of pre-consumer recycled ropes taken directly from the production process. During the production of ropes, there is a lot of leftover waste that would otherwise be sent to the landfill. Edelrid have managed to recycle these leftover ropes from the production process and put them straight back into the production cycle, thereby conserving resources. Although it's not quite like recycling an old climb rope, it's a huge leap forward in responsible climb rope manufacture and saves a lot of waste. And who knows how long before they can make the next leap into being able to recycle used climbing ropes. Whilst on the subject of recycling ropes can be challenging as you can't generally recycle them at a standard recycling centre. Some climbing brands will take in old ropes, and there are organisations which deal in nylon to supply schools, colleges, art centres. So perhaps find one of them local to you that you can retire your old rope to. Adelaide have teamed up with an organisation called New Seed, who upcycle old ropes into products like chalk bags, belts, shopping bags, even chairs. But there are lots of people who upcycle old ropes. I came across a local woman to me whose business was to upcycle old ropes into dog leads and collars. She even paid climbers for their old ropes. Or you can upcycle it yourself by making a nice rope mat. Check out the Adelaide rope mat manual and video in the link in the description. I genuinely believe that the route to more sustainable lifestyles is enjoying our products for longer. If you buy poor quality crap, you can't expect it to last a long time. However, something that's built to last by a reputable manufacturer could even outlive you. Now, I'm not here to point fingers at what's good and what's bad, but it's worth doing your own research on climbing gear or talking to friends who you know are knowledgeable in this area. Of course, price often puts people off, with higher quality, more durable products often costing more initially. But in my experience, the initial cost is almost always made up for over the length of time you own it. Bottom line, every piece of climbing gear will have a footprint. But if we can draw that footprint out for longer over many years, it will have a lower impact than if we were to replace it by buying another piece of gear. Adelaide knows that the most sustainable product is a product that was never produced. So in their Built to Last program, they have incorporated lifespan goals into the design of their products. For example, in their bulletproof carabiners and screw gates, they have inlaid a section of steel where the carabiner typically wears away over use. By doing this, they have massively increased the lifespan of the product and therefore lowered its potential carbon footprint, as the consumers shouldn't need to replace it anytime soon. But it's not just a case of buying the most durable product, but also making sure we look after it, because even the most durable gear will degrade if we treat it like trash. Ropes, for example, should always be housed in a rope bag, especially when used at the crag or at the wall. If dirt from the ground gets into the rope, the dirt will become ingrained in the fibres and over time damage and weaken the sheath, which will reduce the rope's lifespan considerably. Of course, we can't expect our gear to be completely bomb-proof, and as climbers and outdoorsy people, we'll be putting our kit through far more than most, even if we do cherish and look after our beloved gear. In some cases, it's totally fair to try and repair before you replace. A great example with this would be with clothing. My down jackets and climbing pants have patches all over them. To a random guy in the street, I might look a bit homeless. But you know what? I love my patches. They remind me of the time I ripped the jacket, which more often than not was during some ridiculous climbing adventure. Or this one, which was when I tried to squeeze between two walls as it was a shortcut to the bakery. Sometimes though, it's not okay to repair. For things that we rely on to save our lives, such as ropes, harnesses, and quick draws, don't ever bother trying to repair it yourself. Just recycle them if you can, and buy new from a reputable manufacturer. However, one piece of climbing gear that you should always repair are climbing shoes. Getting your shoes resoled is the most responsible action you can take with your footwear, as it can increase the lifespan of your shoes multiple times over. Unfortunately, the history of resoling climbing shoes has certainly had its ups and downs, which has put people off. But I'm happy to say that in the 21st century, we've pretty much nailed it. Any good resoler will be able to bring your old worn out climbing shoes back to life. Not once, not twice, but often 3 or 4 times without any sign of them getting worse, and often getting better. Even me, I'm sponsored by a climbing shoe company and get them free, and all but one of my current pairs are resoles from the last 2 to 4 years. I won't ask for a new pair of shoes unless I really need them. With climbing shoes, it's important to remember to get them resoled before you wear through the rand on the toe. As soon as there's a dirty big hole in the end of your shoes, it becomes more of a challenge to resole. So in the name of sustainability, it's far better to act sooner with shoes than to leave them until it's too late. It's rare that we know the full extent of the impact of our climbing gear, and there are a lot of hidden aspects to the production of gear that we as consumers don't know about that really we should. For example, one part of the manufacturing process of carabiners that I didn't know about was anodizing. Anodizing is a process by which carabiners are coloured, which makes them look nice and helps them avoid corrosion, but involves using highly toxic chemicals and creates a waste product that, if not properly disposed of, is extremely harmful to humans and the environment. Now, the benefit of anodized beaners is apparently negligible if stored and used correctly, begging the question, do we really need them to be anodized for many climbing scenarios? Edelrid have just released the first non-anodized beaner, the HMS Bulletproof Eco. It's a locking beaner specific for bellying, and without a doubt, a scenario where anodizing is not really necessary. But it's not just anodizing. There are lots of other aspects of production that are equally as harmful to the environment. And indeed, it is the chemistry of creating the materials to the products we climbers use every day that are causing the most harm. So, what do we do about this? Well, the steps to more sustainable production are in motion. We just need to support them. And we can do this by supporting the brands who are actively taking these steps. One of the best ways to identify these brands are in third-party certifications such as Bluesign. Bluesign is a company that specialises in helping brands provide safer and more sustainable environments for people to work in and everybody to live in. The Bluesign system is the strictest environmental standard for textile product manufacturing. In comparison to other eco-friendly labels, the Bluesign system tackles the root problem. Instead of only examining the finished product and analysing it for chemical substances, the Bluesign system checks the entire production process of all processed components of a product. Fabrics, yarns, chemicals like dyes, etc. All input and output flows are examined. Only materials which comply with the strict Bluesign criteria are used in the production cycle. This results in eco-friendly products that are manufactured in a resource-saving way. Now, Edelrid have been partnered with Bluesign since 2009, and as a result, 100% of their ropes are Bluesign products, as well as 38% of their entire range. Other Bluesign system partners include Patagonia, Arc'teryx, the North Face, even Nike are on there, alongside 661 other companies, from brands and retailers to the textile manufacturers and chemical suppliers. As I said at the beginning, the goals of more sustainability in climbing gear manufacturing goes well beyond our individual purchasing decisions, but it is all our purchasing decisions combined that helps drive brands to making decisions for the greater good. There has been some solid evidence taken from marketing studies in recent years that prove that not only do more people think more ethically about their purchasing decisions than ever before, but as a result, brands that fail to meet the ethical standards set by us are losing business and growing slower. It has to be mentioned that greenwashing is a thing, and some brands have attempted to capitalize on a growing consumer demand for sustainable products, which is why it's even more important to not take a promise of sustainability at face value and instead to look towards certifications such as Bluesign and to arm yourself with the tools to spot greenwashing. You know, a simple Google of how to spot greenwashing will give you some ideas. So, when looking at buying new climbing gear, investigate which brands are not only doing their best to promote sustainability in their manufacturing process, but actively sharing their supply chain as well as their future environmental goals. It's also really important to look at the social footprint these companies leave, i.e., the effect production has on lives. In a world of fast fashion and cheap consumption, the price of this comes at the expense of workers and their communities, often, but not exclusively, in less economically developed countries. Look for brands that meet the highest environmental and social certifications, such as Bluesign and Fairtrade, and aren't afraid to share their weaknesses. If brands like Edelrid and Patagonia are happy to have themselves audited from an ethical stance, then surely everyone else should too. As Rick Ridgway, Patagonia's vice president, said, "There's no business on a dead planet." And that's why we as consumers need to support the brands who put the planet and its inhabitants first. If you got this far, folks, well done. It was a heavy one. I'd love to hear your thoughts on conscious consumerism and responsible manufacturing, so feel free to write your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. And of course, as always, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and ding that wee bell for notifications on when the next video is out.